Welcome everyone, my name is T. I'm the VP of Field Excellence at SAP Business Transformation Management for Asia Pacific. And I'm happy to introduce you today to the journey of enterprise architecture at Coles, together with our trusted partner from Kapish. But before I get started, Daniel, why don't you introduce yourself? What do you do at Coles?
My name is Daniel Nicholson. I'm the head of tech architecture and governance at Coles, and I look after a team of about 40 people. We look at we cover all the horizontals of the technology side, so data, security, cloud, IT, all these types of things, and we support the business and the greater Coles technology.
Thank you.
And I'm Craig Stanley. I head up the Enterprise Architecture Alliances within Kapish, and that includes the partnerships with SAP LeanIX, SAP Signavio, and IBM's Aptio product in particular, supporting our customers on their sort of continuous transformation ecosystem, driving the outcomes with those organisations to achieve their strategic goals.
Thank you. So let's keep the memory lane light, but we still want to understand, how did your journey start? When did your enterprise architecture journey start at Coles, and was there something happening around that time?
So I started in the very start of 2020, so probably just 2 months before COVID. It was a very interesting time to join a big new company, working in the office for a couple of months before everyone pretty much got sent home for a couple of years. So Coles adopted a very hybrid, flexible working arrangement. So it's been a longer journey back into the office than it has been for some of the other companies. Around that time, it was, as I said, pretty chaotic. There's a lot of big transformation projects going on. We were building 4 brand new facilities at the same time, 2 automated distribution centers, 2 customer fulfillment centers, as well as a number of other transformations through our HR systems and things like that. And our information management, our knowledge management was not really up to scratch for the amount of work that we're trying to do. So a lot of people spending a lot of time trying to just gather information to then try and synthesize down to get an answer back. It was a long and arduous process. I always like to think of Coles as about 7 or 8 kind of different areas. We have the big brother, which is supermarkets. We have the little brother, which is liquor. We have then supply chain. We do import, export, international and interstate routes. We have digital e-com marketing, which is for all our kind of digital and engagement channels. We have everything from running a payment switch like a bank does. So we do all our own FPOS transactions through our own infrastructure. We also have white label insurance products, and then we have all the corporate systems and all the corporate functions that just run a 120,000 person company. And then we have kind of core IT. So we're the ones that hopefully facilitate a lot of that happening.
Yeah, I've got an interesting anecdote actually around the Coles in that 2020 period as well. It happened to be that when we were talking with Coles around the procurement of LeanIX, Andre Christ, the founder of LeanIX, happened to be out to see the Australian Open. And so in the Melbourne office, we had, I think it was Dan's counterpart at the time, in the office there with Andre Christ. And I was actually doing a demonstration of LeanIX in front of the founder of LeanIX, Coles. It took a little while beyond there to get the procurement completed. But yeah, one of the very few customers that's actually had the benefit of the CEO at the time of LeanIX as part of the sales process.
Yeah.
Very good. You mentioned earlier there were some transformation initiatives ongoing, as usual, right? Because change is the only constant in life. We've heard it everywhere. But in your particular area, in your mandate, in your scope, what were, let's say, the challenges you were bestowed upon to solve?
So when we started our LeanIX journey, it would usually take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to kind of get an answer back as what is the as-is state of the application space, so of the domain, of the interfaces, where it's hosted, the integration types, even the identity management, all those types of things. So an enterprise architect would have to reach out to the different skill groups. Have to go to the identity team, the DBAs, the network team, the infrastructure apps teams, and try and collate all that information. And then it'd be a process of trying to ensure that this is correct, forming that kind of that one picture and saying, okay, look, this is our current as-is state before we even get onto that to-be state. So what we did with the ingestion, or the start of LeanIX, was to take everyone's spreadsheets, and I called it the spreadsheet assassination phase, where we'd ask all the teams, give us all your application registers, all your interface registers, all your hosting types, or your components, and we would take them in, we'd like rationalize them, validate them, load them into LeanIX. Then I would ask the teams to actually go and then delete those spreadsheets so they no longer had that reference. And I'd tell them to then, okay, you can use LeanIX for your reference now. And yeah, we'd start from that point.
But if you mentioned it took 4 to 6 weeks to get this kind of visibility,
Yeah.
how long does it take now?
Well, we can write a report in about half an hour, but people can actually just go self-serve. So it's pretty much instantaneous. So all the teams have access. We didn't want it just to be an architecture tool or an enterprise architecture tool. We wanted to like federate the information out, so everyone in technology has access to LeanIX. They can log in, they can view their own reports, make their own dashboards and all that. So it's pretty much instantaneous self-service.
It's very impressive. Before I go further down the journey, I actually wanted to also bring in the aspect, how was your collaboration? How did you work with the partner Kapish at that time? Yeah,
so Kapish we used a Jumpstart program. They helped us identify those data sources that we needed. So we'd go out and look for all the application lists, all the interface lists, all the hosting types, all these types of things, and Kapish would then help us like validate that, make sense of the data, figure out where we had our gaps in our data or our metadata. Once again, rationalize down. Also really helping with like those data constructs, because you can use the system in a bunch of different ways, but we had to use it in a way that made sense for Coles. So they were the experts in the tool. They helped us make sense of the data, and at least those kind of like first reports that we could actually start producing out, they were essential to getting that data in there, that data rationalized and valid, and then we built out the attributes after that. And those first reports, though, they were some of the most beneficial ones. Just even being able to see like number of applications was just fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting too with a lot of those customers will attempt to do out-of-the-box configuration, like a straightforward configuration, and that's certainly our recommended starting point. LeanIX has got a fit-for-purpose meta model, but then customers, organisations have got their own nuance, their own details. So one of the things we work very hard to ensure is that where customers do need to deviate from the pure out-of-the-box, or if there's an option A, option B sort of way to populate it. One of the conversations is often applications versus IT components, or what level of granularity for data objects, org structures, all those sorts of details. Being able to say, for your organisation, because you've got this particular requirement, at this stage, this might be the best way to do it. Trying to ensure that organisations don't make decisions that they find later on there's an unintended consequence. And I think for Coles, through that collaboration, we've seen very few occasions where you go, we would have been better off if we had done it another way. You're continuing to grow the value of the repository by building more and more steps to it, a bit more integration to ServiceNow or other products as well.
Yeah. And if you ever want like an endless argument, get a bunch of architects in a room and try and define a standard. That was
really. I usually find it's easy. We have 50,000, 50,000 of them.
Exactly. Just trying to define, what is an application? Because everyone has a different term for an application. Is an Excel spreadsheet an application? Is like SAP Finance, is that an application? So where is that spectrum? Where do we sit, and what definition do we land on? And then where do we start adding our other information after that? So the definition of what is an application was one of the first big hurdles that we had to just get over. Once we'd agreed that, we can move on with the other data sources.
We have seen already one KPI, 4 to 6 weeks now, self-service. That's really impressive. But I want to go on the journey itself. How long did it actually take once you get started to see the first data-driven number?
Yeah, it takes me a while back. It was probably about 3 to 6 months, I think. So once we started looking for people's spreadsheets, we realized all the data is at different levels. So once again, what someone calls an application, someone else calls a server. What someone calls a server, someone else is just referring to a product. So it was it took a lot of effort at the very start with the help of Kapish, which was to rationalize once get that down into what actually is an application, what makes sense to store metadata at, and that journey was probably about 3 to 6 months before we got clean data. So we were getting reports out for sure, but then we'd realize that once again someone calls one application X and someone calls it Y and someone calls it X plus Y. So you have duplicates in there, and it's basically rationalizing that down, running the reports again. trying to figure out where your gaps are. So yeah, it was about 3 months for the start of the reports, and probably about 6 months before we actually had the quality of our own data to then we can actually face outwards and say, okay, now here is the list of applications in your domain, or here's a list of applications that are all SaaS hosted.
So Daniel, can you share with us a little bit, without going into proprietary confidential information, but how is the status of the application rationalization going on so far in Coles?
Once we actually knew where all our applications are, we'd mapped them all to business capabilities. It should have been, this is our hypothesis, it should have been a simpler task to actually go, okay, by this capability, how many applications support that capability? And then we could go to the business and say, okay, which one would you like to get rid of? Because there's 4 applications, they all do roughly the same thing. At Coles, it's been a different challenge. A lot of the different business units, they have their own requirements, their own budgets, and as I mentioned, there's lots of different divisions or domains in Coles. So what we found is that we were actually just increasing our complexity over time. So with the measurement that I took last year was we added roughly around 100 applications and properly decommissioned probably about 3. So it wasn't a great number in simplification terms, but obviously this is supporting the business for their in their context that they want to increase functionality or drive new customer domains, things like this. But it's been an interesting journey. We've really changed from thinking about being able to just rationalize down to obviously understanding that all the applications that are added, you do support the business, but at some stage we will have to make a choice. Okay, as complexity goes up, it takes more time to implement new changes, or it takes longer. So agility goes down pretty much as complexity goes up. So there'll be a point where where we've got enough information again to go to the business and say, look, you've now got 7 applications that do this same capability. What would you like to have a discussion about? Is there a way we can combine some of these together? Is there a way you can just use the functionality of 1 instead of 2 to actually help drive costs down, but also increase the rate of change? Because the more applications we have, the more integrations, the more complexity overall.
But would you say that at least you have a more, let's say, data-driven visibility besides, let's say, back in the days having spreadsheets? So at least you would be able to assess that state faster?
Absolutely. We can cut the data now by so many different ways. So we're working through a technology business management piece. So being able to track our costs using Aptio. And so we get the actual financial data about how much it costs to run an application. We get the capability mapping, which has been amazing just to see what areas are over or under supported. We get that life cycle information to know where our systems are aging out. So we can now cut the data different ways so we can get different reports and have different conversations with different stakeholders based on that information.
How does that actually then impact the topic of the application roadmap? Where are you in the journey? Because we have seen some customers very much focus on moving to the cloud. Other customers have been already on the cloud for some years, but don't see the value, maybe, for example, or they have different kind of complexities. How is the status in Coles if you're looking towards the roadmap of your application landscape?
Yeah. Just on cloud, our approach has always been right cloud, not all cloud or any of those other kind of methodologies of just moving things, because we want to do it in the right way. So we want to move the right applications if it makes sense. So we will look at especially some of our older systems, somewhere we've got quite a lot of tech debt, at that rationalization. So can we get rid of a couple of aging systems by buying a SaaS platform? Can we at least move to or refactor an in-house tool to a more modern tool set, so we can host it either in containers or VMs and move it off of kind of that more static infrastructure. So I guess we've got a number of different ways now where we can look at our applications and our data and start to kind of rationalize for the future. And the spend information we also get is we get it and we can view it back in LeanIX. That information is also very critical to be able to see, okay, how much does this application cost? Is it going to be a really good target for savings as well?
There's a couple of properties that can work in parallel there too. So there's the Gartner time model, the tolerate, invest, migrate, eliminate. And then, of course, if you've identified where you've got sort of a cloud opportunity, is it which of the 6R strategies to take that through? Those properties tend to, are they part of the filters within that workspace now?
Yeah, we definitely use a time model for most of our decisions. We haven't adopted the 6R yet. It's probably something we should move on to in the future. But the time model the Gartner time model is the main one we use for our tolerate, invest, migrate, eliminate. And so it's usually that migrate category. What are we looking to do? It's still, the function is still useful by the business. What are we going to migrate? It's usually on aging technology. So modernization for those types of applications.
Any particular key deliverable or metric or achievement you could share with us, maybe?
Yeah, the technical debt is an interesting one as well, because different organizations have different appetites for how much risk they want to take on, and therefore how much technical debt they can live with. It's the facilitation of those reports out of LeanIX is what we use now to put into our board reporting for what our scale of technical debt is. It enables that conversation, so we have quite accurate data now, so we can track it over time, and we can see, and we can project in the future. We know that a whole bunch of our systems are going to go out, say, when the next version of Windows it runs end of life. So what are we going to do for them? So we can track our technical debt, and we can also use it to influence the amount of funding that we get to reduce it or either keep it at that same level.
I think that's also a very important topic you mentioned, that it's not only about, this is red, fix it, green, just leave it, but being really mindful of the priorities on how to deal with it, given the environment. Yeah, because it's maybe not the nicest number to look at all the time, but seeing that you can really manage and be in control, I think that's also actually a tremendous achievement, because sometimes you're just flying blind, and that's worse.
Yeah. And in architecture, we have to be realists, right? We know that there's more technical debt that we can fix in a year, and we know that we're never going to get enough budget to fix every single thing, even if we wanted to. So we have to prioritize. What is the most high priority thing? So we look at what facilitates the most critical business processes. What is the what are the systems that hold our most of our critical data, or that are required by the SOC Act now to protect, or we've got a lot of PI information. Do we need to upgrade those systems? So we have that information now to help prioritize our lifecycle management targets, and so with our capital envelope, we can prioritize the things that we need to get done, the most important ones.
Well, thanks for sharing really the journey and where you're at. Maybe coming to a close. So what's next? What are your key priorities at the moment, looking backwards of a journey of around 5 years now? Yeah. How does it look in the architecture of Coles in 5 years? If you can, it's a good moment for also some wishful thinking if you want.
Yeah. If I think about where we've come from, just being able to facilitate reports for enterprise architecture, to save ourselves time, to really LeanIX becoming a really critical tool now for things like our SOC reporting, our PR reporting, our lifecycle management, all the other teams that the application and that our work now supports. It's actually been an excellent journey to go on. It's saved ourselves a lot of time. It's helped with a lot of challenges, especially around compliance, and it helps us as architecture and the strategy team to actually sell the right messages to the right people. So it's been a really great journey, and I'm glad we put in LeanIX when we did, and we started with Kapish on that journey back 5 years ago. On what I would see architecture in the future, I'd love to rationalize down so many applications. There are so many overlapping capabilities that we have multiple applications on. As I said, reduction of complexity is something I'd just really like to see, because I know that we could go faster as an organization if we were to decommission some of our old legacy things, if we weren't to have multiple versions running of other things. If those were some of the options that I could go forward with. Also, an actual integration into ServiceNow to get our actuals. LeanIX is our theoretical view of the world. To get the actual view of our entire landscape is a challenge. We have about 4 million things in our CMDB, so there's a lot of categorization that we need to go through. But I'd love to see that kind of project get through and do full asset management, and then have the real-time view of what is in our environment into LeanIX, and that all tied together with our TBM model in Aptio. That would be my ideal like 4-year, 5-year plan.
Very good. How about yourself? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I just think the next steps, obviously, from a Kapish and Cole's perspective, is to move forward with the likes of a strategic review of some sort, where we work with you guys to understand more about the future goals, as we've been doing over the history, and then helping with each of those big rocks. Current conversation is around ServiceNow, which is fantastic. Seeing that with the 4 million objects sort of being managed down into a way that can make sense from an enterprise architecture perspective, and then looking at further usage of those the business objectives and goals, aligning the actual content of the repository through those initiatives and other ways of implementing change within the architecture. But looking forward to the next phase as well.
Very good. And I only have one final question. Knowing what you know now, let's say you are reborn or have a time traveler, what would you tell Daniel 5 years ago when you're embarking? What kind of, let's say, key learnings or maybe failures, so for the lack of a better word?
I think I would have pushed harder at the start for ServiceNow integration. It's been like a challenge, being able to, like, having to manually add a lot of the information, but having a very complex CMDB and having lots of information in there, uncategorized information, it's been a challenge. I would have, like, my advice to my former self, my past self, would have been to, like, I guess, push harder on that area and kind of work in a business case that actually got that funded and got that part complete, so we could actually do that real view of the environment.
Well, thanks a lot, Daniel. We have heard about the journey of Coles from the beginning 5 years ago, and also heard where they are at the moment. And we are looking forward to be the trusted partner together with Kapish on the continuous journey.